Hey guys, what's up? This adorable graphics card, believe it or not, is a full-fat GeForce GTX 1660 Ti. And as I just mentioned, it is freaking adorable. Okay, real talk. This 1660 Ti from HP is adorable. And in today's video, I'm gonna see if I can have my cute graphics card and eat it too. This is the HP OEM GeForce GTX 1660 Ti that can be found in many of their Omen pre-built gaming PCs. This is one of the smallest cards that HP makes, and generally speaking, one of the smallest on the market in general, and that's the exact reason I purchased it. I love the size of this card. For a 1660 Ti, which is a relatively powerful mid-range graphics card, the performance to size ratio leads to a dense piece of computer hardware. Now, with the size, there is no backplate naturally, and the power connector, being an 8-pin PCI Express external power connector, is not on the side. It actually occupies the back of the PCB and graphics card. This means that although we do get a little bit of a higher profile in the back because of the cable coming out the back, we get a very slim graphics card on the side, and this can fit into some very tiny PC builds, which I'd like to do in a future video, so stay subscribed if you want to see me do some extremely tiny builds with this adorable graphics card. Now, if this card looks kind of familiar in a sense and almost nostalgic, well, then you might be almost as old as me, because this graphics card is very reminiscent of the R9 Fury Nano. Now, unfortunately, I don't have an R9 Fury Nano, but I do have a Radeon Instinct MI8, which is the same exact card without a fan, and actually, yep, it's about the same size. Albeit, the 1660 Ti is actually slightly smaller than our Instinct MI8. If you look right there, there's a little bit more. Although they sport almost an identical design, especially when you look at the fins and the heatsinks, although this has more fins, but is a much denser card. It's a lot heavier, has more copper. It's got a whole copper plate in there, while this does not. Now, enough talking about how adorable this card looks. You must be assuming, as I did, that this card is compromising in some other way. There must be a power limitation or something similar to allow this card to A, remain cool with just this tiny wimpy fan, and allow for it to keep this super small form factor. Well, let's hop right into the benchmarks and see if HP is pulling a fast one on its Omen customers. Moving right into the classic starting benchmark of Rainbow Six Siege, and well, at maximum settings we're getting over 140 FPS, so that's pretty typical for a GTX 1660 Ti at max settings 1080p. I really don't see anything wrong here at all. The card performs great, and I didn't even change the fan profile or anything, and it stays, well, surprisingly cool given its interesting form factor. So far nothing suspicious, and we just got a really nice tiny 1660 Ti here. Moving on to Ready or Not, a game that is a lot more graphically intensive, and again, the performance is relatively good at above 60 FPS at almost all points in the map. Even at ultra settings 1080p in game, there's no discrepancy from a normal 1660 Ti. This card performs almost identical. Maybe slightly worse, but that could be accounted for by margin of error, and I really see no issue here with this graphics card. Now, if I'm being honest, it's been like 2 years since I've actually owned a different 1660 Ti, so I can't really speak to the performance in games like this, but this, based on online performance charts, this seems to look almost identical. So let's move on to a different game. Normally I end with it, but this time I want to move on to Grand Theft Auto 5, because this is the benchmark where I decided to turn on the power monitoring in MSI Afterburner. And I believe I've found the discrepancy with this card, although it's not as big as I thought it would be. A normal GTX 1660 Ti has a rated TDP of 120 watts, and most graphics cards on the market that are a 1660 Ti GPU on board, most 1660 Ti's that I've seen on the market will consistently hit or even exceed that 120 watt TDP quite frequently while under max load. If the cooler is good enough on the card and it has good enough power delivery, why not stretch the limits of your TDP and get more performance. Our HP does the opposite of that. This OEM graphics card seems to be drawing less than 120 watts at about 100 watts at max load. That is very interesting. Basically, this means there's about 20 extra watts of heat it doesn't have to dissipate compared to a standard 1660 Ti. Now, this does actually lead to slightly worse performance in games, but the difference is marginal to the point that it doesn't actually matter. I challenge you to find the difference between this card in game and a different one besides maybe the cooling performance, which now in a case that has bad airflow, I have 100% had to raise the fan speed to keep this thing cool enough to, well, keep living. So that's something to note. This fan is nice and all, and this is a pretty decent heatsink, but it cannot keep this card fully cool in a case environment. On my test bench, which is open air, it's absolutely fine, but that's about where its absolutely fineness kind of ends. So that's just something to note. If you happen to pick up a card like this, you might want to make yourself a custom fan profile if you're going to be running it in a case, or make sure you have good airflow through these vertical fins, which actually are more conducive to case airflow blowing through them like this. So now that we've gotten that little power thing out of the way, let's move on to Red Dead Redemption 2, which runs exceptionally well. 60 FPS at the medium preset is all I can ask for out of any graphics card, especially a mid-range card like this. It performs good enough where if you're buying a 1660 Ti for like 300 bucks, you've gotten yourself a great deal, especially when it comes to gaming. This thing is pretty great, and at a form factor like this is extremely impressive. Now, I did benchmark Battlefield 2042, and it went okay. The game is bad and also was having a weird CPU issue, so I'm not going to include that in my benchmarks from now on, but I might replace it with Elden Ring or something once it gets a little more good for PC. So that's really all I have for you guys today. This graphics card brings up an interesting part of the consumer market that I like to kind of occupy holistically. I freaking love tiny graphics cards. I think they're really awesome. I love when they take a card that, well, quite frankly, should be a lot bigger and make it into a nano, so to speak. I like tiny power supplies, and I like ITX builds. So that's why I purchased this card and added it to my collection and am kind of keeping it, because I just love cards that are this size. The 1660 Ti is efficient enough that it's entirely possible with this graphics card to build a PC that is cool, quiet, and performs well. Like, this is a good card. So I thought it would be interesting to make a little video about it and how free and adorable it is. I hope you guys kind of enjoyed. If you see one of these, just know that I highly recommend a card like this for a small form factor PC. That's all I have for you guys today. I hope you guys kind of enjoyed. I love you guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.